There we go. Now that we're halfway through, I'll start hitting record. Right. So I think where Microsoft is going with this is that I think there was a study out that whenever I think that the companies that roll out SharePoint spend 3 to 1 on average dollars spent for consultant services more than the actual license. So I think that Microsoft saw that and thought, like I know it's great that our partners can eat off of this, but at the same time, it's kind of ridiculous that a customer can't open up a page here and get something going in a modern aspect. And not only that, SharePoint now has a mobile application, right? And instead of creating this custom mobile experience, this great native mobile experience, wouldn't it be a lot more efficient if we can leverage the web pages that already exist if they're mobile ready and just show those in the mobile app? So it kind of works like a browser. So I think that those type of things are what was on Microsoft's mind. And again, I don't work for them, but I would imagine that those were driving factors going forward. And plus, I mean, the old experience was it was it was toast. People have been complaining about it since it was released in 2013. So this is a welcome, I think, a welcome refresh. All right, let me. So anyway, so these are some of the web parts. Go to this guy. Just publish this news. We got some cool stuff going on here. We can actually have commenting. I don't think I can tag anyone in this, but comments come in. Hey, I like that Google image. Post. Now, so this is modern, wouldn't you say, right? It's what we would expect on a new site if we were to visit it nowadays. And this is all done without a whole bunch of developer intervention. All right. So let me move on to my next thing here, and I forgot what it is, so let me open up a paper here. But we just compared the two. And we just looked at these web parts. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting about this is that I created this quick links web part. Now, in traditional sense, what does that mean? Oh, I got a question here. What options are available to customize modern web parts and pages? So we'll get to that in a little bit, I hope. But the option is to use the SharePoint development framework. And I'll show you a little bit of that and how we can actually, when we get to the branding aspect of it, how we can actually, we can still do what we want to if we are rogue enough, right? If you are willing to toe the line, you can actually still do it. But you're definitely toeing the line and at risk of breaking things, but you break things from a client side instead of a server side, which is what we used to do. So we can still break stuff if we want to, but we'll break it on the client and not necessarily on the server, which makes Microsoft a whole lot happier, I'm sure. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, was there another question? No, that's it. All right, so moving on. So let's talk about branding actually now that we bring this up. So we got this nice slick UI here, but let's say, for example, that we don't really like it that much, and we want to change it. We want to create a master page for it. Well, you can't today. You can't create a master page for it. And in fact, if you go to change the look, all you have are these themes available to you out of the box. But there's no master page settings. If I go to site information here and site settings, like I said here, under look and feel is normally where you would find the master page link if the publishing feature were on, but it is not on. And even if it was on, I can assure you that the modern pages aren't going to respect Seattle or Oslo or whatever else you put up there, right? So we have to look at different avenues for branding this. And I'm here to tell you that right now the avenues are really, really slim. You can actually change the colors, but there's not a whole lot of hope for you to completely change the layout with the out-of-the-box capabilities at the moment. However, I will say though, I mean, if you are in Office 365 and you're kind of looking at SharePoint as a service, which is where I think that most of us need to start looking at it, right? We don't want to change it completely from what it's good at. We want to add the capabilities that we can when we can, but the days of the work that we used to put in to make SharePoint just completely dance on its head, maybe those days are behind us. Maybe those are things that we don't necessarily need to do anymore. SharePoint is going to take, excuse me, Microsoft is going to actually focus on the user experience of the application. But you can change the colors, all right? So let's look at a couple different ways that we can change the colors so we can see what that looks like. So if I go into here to change the look, I have the ability to swap out the colors here. Let's say I want this nice orange here. And as I change this, the page is changing. So again, really, really nice, right? You can get a preview of what this looks like before you actually commit to it. I want a nice little red here. I can do that. Purple is probably one of my favorite themes here. Let's go with dark yellow. So we just flipped it on its head, right? Now it's got a black background, and this is looking like a developer's playground. So I'm actually going to say, yeah, I'm going to apply that because as all my developer friends see my black or my dark gray and think that I'm like a better developer. So I'm going to stick with that. That's the way this business works. Whatever you got to do, right? So yeah, but it actually flips the font color, which is really neat, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So what about these though? But let's say, for example, you're not the Pittsburgh Steelers and you don't necessarily want your site to look like this. Let's say you have your own branding that you want to have. How do we affect that? How do we get into customizing the colors? I'm glad you asked. So Microsoft released themes some time ago. I know they were available in SharePoint 2013. I don't know about 2007. Oh yeah, they were, but different way. But there were themes released in SharePoint 2007 that allowed you to, if you knew hex colors and you knew a little bit of XML schema, you could work something up and change some of the colors and change the links and all that kind of stuff. And that was great. And I think Microsoft released a branding tool that allowed you to, through a UI, put these colors in, and you can see what SharePoint was kind of going to look like from a coloring aspect. Those themes are dead, believe it or not. They have actually gone to a much more simplified approach to branding. Let me show you it. So let me see if I can. So they created this thing called a theme generator. Let me see if I can just copy this guy. And although it's somewhat helpful, it's notoriously hard to find. So if you go to developer.microsoft.com, I would imagine that you can search for it, but there's a whole lot of noise out just trying to find this tool. So if you're looking for it, this is what it looks like. It's called a theme generator. And at the meetup, let me know, or excuse me, in the meetup, remind me, and I'll try to paste a link in there. Because it's kind of hard to find. Even though it's public knowledge, it's kind of hard to find. But what this allows you to do, it gives you three options alone to start with. It says, hey, what is your primary theme color? What do you want your text color to be? And what do you want your background color to be? So that's where we start. So I want to say, let's say, for example, let's go find a nice color here. Actually, it doesn't really matter. If I had the hex color or the RGBA, I could do that. But I'm just going to choose on this little guy right here. What do you guys think about some hot pink? Is that hot pink? Lime green. Let's go with some lime green. No, I think hot pink. My daughter would be proud. Hot pink. Let's go with that. All right, so my body color, I want this to be, let's just make this, dark gray is pretty good. I'll just stick with that. I'll just stick with the dark gray. And my background color could be white, which is what it's set to currently. Or I could say, hey, I want my background color to be just green. Well, green and pink. All right. I didn't know this did this. Let's change this piece as well. But let's say we want it to be green. Why is it not respecting my green here? There we go. All right. So this is really not looking good, but we're going to stick with it anyway because we're in the zone here. All right, we'll go with that green. All right, so we've got pink and green. Now, as I'm doing this page is starting to generate a schema or a configuration for me. Let's take a look at this configuration. This right here is, let's look at this. So JSON is very easy to read. And it's really just key value pairs, right? So this is a key. Here's a pair or a color that should go with it. How you doing? The first one here is theme primary. What is the primary color? This says D600 B2. Sure enough, this is the one. This is the color that we entered. Theme lighter. I didn't enter this, but SharePoint, well, this page through whatever magic it uses says, hey, I know that that's your primary color. Let me suggest some secondary colors for you as well, some theme lighters as well. Going on down, there's theme light, theme tertiary, theme secondary, dark, dark alt, darker, lighter alt, lighter light, and these type of things. So is anybody here familiar with Bootstrap? So Bootstrap kind of made famous their branding mechanism in that when you went and changed colors, you didn't go say, hey, change all the rest of this color. You kind of stored a variable for brand primary, brand secondary, and Bootstrap just kind of took care of the rest. It's kind of what they're emulating here. I wish they gave you the ability to choose your own secondary color, but they don't at the moment. They don't within this tool, but you can certainly change that. So let's say this is what we want, and we want to change this with PowerShell. So let me open up PowerShell here. You got a couple different options. You can change this with JSON, meaning so you would have to take a developer and he would have to post this JSON up via API and make this theme available. Or you could do it through PowerShell. I'm going to take the latter route and do it through PowerShell. So first thing first, I need to connect to my Office 365 tenant here. I'm going to copy out some good old text, I think. So I'm going to connect to my service. It's going to ask me to log in. That's Lester. That's Scanners. That's Lester. AZ.com. Sign in there. Perfect. Now I need to store my theme config in a variable. And this is, again, if I just take this out as is, I'll just copy and paste it right out here. Copy. Paste it in. So now my theme config is there. It's a dictionary, right? It's got a key and a value. Now I want to say, SharePoint, I want to make this theme available. So I'm going to put in this next line here, and I'll explain this. So it's add SPO theme. I give it a name. I call it my little theme. I'm passing in the palette, which is this configuration object that we have. And it asks me if this is inverted. So meaning SharePoint does some work for us. If we say that, hey, this is inverted, it's going to know that, hey, the background color is going to be dark. So let me apply white text to that when I need to. If it's not inverted, we can keep going with the dark text color. And then overwrite. So overwrite is important. It took me a little while to get to this one. So the overwrite command is, if you're used to using PowerShell and the syntax for it, you would imagine that there's an add SPO theme and an update SPO theme. That's actually not the case. There's just add SPO theme. You'll see that if we were to make changes to this, we still run add SPO theme. But if we don't have that overwrite flag there at the back, it doesn't actually do anything. It says it did, but it doesn't actually do anything. So I just put it up there as a habit, no matter what. So I go to add SPO theme. Great. So now let's go back to our site. Let's see if we can go to change the look. And I didn't refresh this page at all. But I go to change the look, and look, here's my little theme. I click this, and wow, that is just beautiful, right? We just did that. We just did that. Oh, you can clap for that. It's awesome. So it's a very corporate look. We click apply, and it's good to go. Now notice what I didn't do. I didn't say add SPO theme to a particular site. I just said add SPO theme. So now we get to some of the benefits of this. Now we have globally managed themes. Before in SharePoint 2013, if I had a theme, I'd have to add it to every single site collection and set it on every single subsite that comes in. And that was laborious, to say the least. Now we store our SPO theme, we store our theme, and it's available to all the site collections within the tenant. So if I go over to some of our other ones here and just go to change the look, look at that. My little theme is already available, and we're good to go. So that was us setting a theme, right? That was I think pretty impressive, and very low work for the most part. Now we could go through there and change those, and just a little pro tip for you. If you're looking at that, looking at the schema here, and you're thinking about changing any of these neutral colors, I probably wouldn't. These neutral colors are designed to be shades of gray. It's 50 shades of gray in a different sense, but I wouldn't just go slap some funky colors on these because you'll see some weird things happening within your tenant. So I think the next question is this all we can change? Like Benita's probably wondering, well, what about hyperlinks, right? Like, can I change the color of hyperlinks? I'll give you another pro tip. The answer is yes, but it's not documented. So if this is being recorded, take a look at this really quick. I'll give you guys a little tip here. So if you are, and this is probably more so for developers to look at, but if you are using Chrome or some type of tool, if you go to the application and go to, I think it's session storage or local storage, and I go to SP theme cache, there's this gigantic string here, and I was curious about it one day, so of course I had to open it up and open Visual Studio Code, create a new file that is a JSON format, paste this guy in. Let's say we treat you like JSON. And let's format you. All right, now look at this. Whoa, this is rich, right? Look at all of the options that we have here. Now, if you look at palette, there are 720 lines of stuff in here that we can actually take advantage of if we may. So let's look at this. Let's look at some of these. So we have body text. That's one we're familiar with. You scroll down. Here's disabled text. This one as we know. But here, look, there's site title. That wasn't in site title. Wasn't available in that theme generator, was it? Accent text. That wasn't available as well. So you have some capabilities here. I think that these things are not documented. They're not available. But again, you put in hyperlink here. If you put in a key, put in a hex value, it should work. So let's test it. Actually, let's put our knowledge to the test. So at the moment, no. But it's funny enough, if I close palette, I can see that there's this object here for fonts. So I would imagine that I don't know if there's a way to add an SPO font at the moment. Like I don't know if that command exists. But I would imagine that at some point in time, there will be a way for you to tap into some of these slots and put in your specific font. That was available in SharePoint 2013. It's no longer available in the communication sites right now. But I would imagine that's coming. So anyway, I think I'm running a little long on time, so maybe I won't dive into this. But anyway, the pro tip here is that if you actually want to look at some of the undocumented aspects of the palette, this is the place to do it. And that has these RGBAs, but I know for a fact, and I've done this before with the accent color or accent text, if you drop this to a lowercase a accent text and put in some type of hex value here into your whatever, into your palette config that the theme generator gave you, it'll actually update the accent text, or it'll update the hyperlink color as well. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward. And it looks like I am going to run out of battery in the middle of a presentation. How much time do I have? Oh, hour 22 minutes. Perfect. I think we can make it happen. All right. So those are your theming options. Again, not all of it is documented, but there's a lot of juicy stuff here if you just dive in. All right. So what if just changing the colors isn't enough? We just want to go completely rogue. Like this is what we're talking about. We want to toe the line. How do we toe the line? I'm glad you asked. So let me check out my time really quick, because this one takes a little bit more time. Yeah, so let's take a look at this. Let's open up Visual Studio Code, and I have so this is developer aspect. This is developer. If you're not a developer, close your eyes. Sorry, give me a second here. App extension. All right. So the SharePoint framework is your option. So somebody asked in one of the questions, what are your options for updating the for customizations now. SharePoint Development Framework is really the key. Let me pop this guy out and make sure I'm not missing any questions there. All right. Looks like we're good. So the SharePoint Development Framework is really the key to how we're going to customize this bad boy. And there are different ways that you can plug into the SharePoint Development Framework. One of them is creating custom web parts. So if you want to create your own slick web part that uses some of the same capabilities, you can do that. And I think we had a presentation on that, or maybe there'll be one forthcoming, but that would be really slick to talk about that and how that whole thing behaves. The other is using what they call app customizers and doing something that we used to do, which is like plug in custom code snippets into placeholders. That's how this whole thing works. So we can actually interject or put some of our code in one of these placeholders, and it'll actually run on every page. Let me show you what that looks like really quickly. So I'm actually going to skip some of the stuff here, and because we're running low on time, and go to a cake that I already have baked. Let me catch you up on what happened here. So I won't go over too much of the SharePoint Development Framework right now, but SharePoint Development Framework uses a couple different tools that SharePoint developers need to learn if they're going to do it. One is NPM and one is Yo. Yo allows you to create essentially like boilerplate templates for starting a code base. One option that you have in there is creating a web part. The other option that you have is creating an app extension. I created an app extension here, and I have this Hello World application. Out of the box, what this thing does is it sets an alert. It shows an alert on the page. I don't want to do that at the moment. What I want to do instead is I actually want to take this bad boy and I want to hide the left navigation menu. Now, why this is something that we used to have to do all the time for team sites. Not sure why you would today, but just as an example. So I created this SAS style sheet, similar to CSS, but a little bit different. Outside the scope here, but I want to show you is that I'm trying to apply some CSS rules to a class that starts with page container. I want to set its left to 0, and I want to set the nav to display none equals important. So again, kind of what we used to do back in the day, right? By back in the day, I mean like last year, not that long ago. So if I go to this guy and go to go observe, no browser. Let's see if this will get up and running for me. And so what I want to demonstrate here is that we still have the ability to completely destroy things if we really want to. So I'm looking at this site right here, and another one of the things that's neat about the development framework is that they give you the ability to preview some of the changes you're going to make with a couple little strange, I'll call them hacks, but they're documented, so maybe it's not a hack if it's documented, but it feels like a hack. But what I can do here is I can go to this page, this SharePoint site and SharePoint Online, and I can append something to the URL, and it'll actually start to load some code from my local server. So let me go over and do that. Actually, I already have this baked, as like I said. All right, so I'm going to paste this on. So if what we did works, this left navigation should disappear, and this should take up full width. It's going to ask me, hey, do you want to load debug scripts? I'm going to say yes. Now, in a production scenario, we would deploy this change as a package and put this in the proper channels to go through it. But we're in development mode here today. All right, so there we go. So what did I do, right? I just, it was really simple. I created this app extension. This is an application customizer, and this is going to load on every page. And I just imported some CSS, for lack of better words. So I just imported this, and this thing is going to show up on every page. And now I have the ability to do whatever I want to do at this point, right? I am on the DOM, and I can do whatever I want to do. Now, of course, use this at your own risk. I hope that your developers know what they're doing when they do this, but I just wanted to demonstrate that, still, You're only limited by your imagination, and anything is possible. Should you do it or not? That's a different discussion. But so, but you can. So that's the branding aspect of it, right? Any questions about that before I move on? Yes. So the question is, will Microsoft updates affect your rogue changes? Possibly. Yeah, it could. Yeah, I shouldn't say it could. Absolutely, it will. But it's a give and take. I'm not sure. I couldn't think of a very good scenario where you would actually want to, at this point, just completely change the layout. It's already responsive, which is the big thing. From that point on, all you should have to do is just create these modern web parts, which they give you a nice little framework for that. But you could, if you wanted to, for example, or I could think of a scenario. I had a customer once that wanted to use the themes, but they wanted the navigation bar to be different. But they didn't want it to adhere to the theme config that we had. So in order to do that, we would just tap in a little bit of CSS here that targets that specific element itself, as opposed to the JSON, the theme generator. It uses general rules, like it might say this bar has like a type of shade of gray, and there are a bunch of other elements that have the same shade of gray. They all use the same. But if you want to target a specific element, you would need to write CSS, and this is the way to do it. Any other questions? All right. Moving on. All right, so I'll pick up the pace here, and I'm sorry, this is taking a little bit. Administering the site. So what I wanted to point out here is that administering this is a little bit interesting. So let's go back to our Office 365 admin portal. And let's go to our admin center here for SharePoint. It lists out our site collections. And as you can see, not one of the ones that I created today are listed here. So it's a bit of a head scratcher, right? Why aren't these site collections that I know I created actually visible here in the admin center? And the answer is a new admin center is coming. I guess this is going to have some type of refresh. I'm not sure why this page doesn't just show them by themselves, but I would imagine that the new admin center is going to have some type of delineation between sites, I guess. But it's not here. So the whole percent used and storage quota, I didn't set any of that stuff. I don't know, and truthfully, we shouldn't care, right? They're doing it. That's why we go to the cloud, right? We don't have to worry about content databases anymore. So who knows how they're doing that? But if I had to guess, I wouldn't even know how to guess at the scale that they're dealing with. And it's probably massive. I would imagine that maybe all your content is stored in a content database with a handful of other companies, but I don't know for sure. Massive scale, right? Stuff that makes my brain hurt, and I'm glad that I don't have to do it. Yeah, you're. I mean, who cares? I mean, you're just sharing a server with people from Russia. I mean, who cares, right? I mean, yeah, we're all on one planet, right? Absolutely. Right. I would imagine that. No, I get a lot of people's concerns about that, but I bet that the people in security are more so afraid of what you are going to do than somebody hacking into your data that's stored in Microsoft. I'd be willing to bet a small wager that Microsoft is going to be better at securing your information than the guys that you have in staff on site. Yeah. I don't really care. As long as I get discounts on some of the advertisements that they give me, they can look at whatever they want. It's all personal preference. I don't have anything to hide from the government. They can read my emails to my wife. All right, so moving on. Sorry, folks on the phone. We just took a little dip into cybersecurity. It's outside the scope here. So administering this is a little bit funky, I guess, what I wanted to get at. Apparently, a new SharePoint admin center is coming. I'll be looking for that in the theater near you in the very near future, but near future is really yet to be defined. So we'll see what happens.
So there's no way to see if you have these provisioning going on from other sites. There's no way to see what people are creating.
Not through the browser at the moment. There may be a way to look at the sites in PowerShell, but this experience, and I know this is a little bit scary for traditional administrators, but it's completely hands off. There was not even an approval. There was no nothing. There was a user asked for it and a user got it. So one thing I wanted to point out. Not if you don't have permissions to see it as an administrator. I mean, like not if you have not followed it. It doesn't just show all the sites available. You can imagine that could get pretty broad, right? But a couple that could get pretty broad. But a couple things I wanted to point out in terms of pros and cons. We've seen the pros, right? It is slick. I think they did a really good job. It's slick, it's responsive, it's fast. It checks all those boxes. And I think that if you are looking to go to a low-code solution, these are awesome. And they're awesome for publishing news and so forth and so on. But I think that one of the things that you may want to look at, some of the things that you need to look out for are and I'll just kind of run through my list here. So we're running a long time. I'll kind of run through these pretty quickly. But one thing that's a little bit difficult with these sites is application reuse, or excuse me, data reuse. So remember when I created that nice little news site and I put my quick links here? Did you notice I didn't tell it what list to use? Like it's just there. If I were to put in these images or like an image library or something like, like an image gallery, I'm not asking it what list to use, nothing. And if I go to my site contents, I thought that, oh yeah, there has to be some type of list back here called quick links that this thing is pulling from, and that's actually not true. So if I have a list of quick links that's about 50 applications, right, and I want that to show up on a handful of pages, I am in a lot of trouble. I'm in a world of hurt. I was in a world of hurt, let me say that. Because the content is not reusable. It's stored inside this page. It's kind of in it. So I guess the word of advice is that if you're planning to leverage content that needs to show up on several pages, and you only want to manage that and store that in one location, maybe look at using list web parts as opposed to some of the newer web parts that store the content directly in the page. Oh no. Let me check. You guys didn't like our theme? You guys didn't like our theme? I worked really hard on that theme. Yeah. So that's one thing to look out for. The content reuse, you need to be thinking about that. Also note that this thing right now cannot be a root site collection. So if I go to my root site collection, which is the root site collection of the tenant, this was here when I spin up the tenant. If I delete this guy and try to create a new site, how do I do it? I have to go through the admin center. Well, communication site isn't an admin center. So if I'm trying to build out this illustrious intranet, it's not going to start with a communication site. So a little bit of an interesting way to get from, you need to kind of think about, okay, how do I get my users from the root, which is what they're probably typically trained to go to some type of site collection for the moment. And I say for the moment because hopefully this will be addressed. How do I get them over there to our true intranet, which is /site/something on a communication site? So I said all that to say, but you can't do this out of the box. However, somebody's wrote a very well-known blog post about saving your communication site as a template. And I showed you that link isn't there by default because it's not supported out of the box. But there's a couple things that you can change in PowerShell to get that link to show up. You can save the communication site as a template, delete your root site collection, create a blank one, upload this WSP, and create the communication site from that so your root site has it. So apparently you can do it, but I'm sure there's some risk to doing that, in that you start to disconnect from the mother template or whatever that is. So you don't get any more updates on your root tenant. So just buyer beware when you look at that blog post. But apparently it's doable, but should you do it or not, that depends on your tolerance for risk. Also, like I said, you can't save this site as a template. And even if you do, now you run into something else. So let me look at this, for example. Let's say that we have this nice communication site, right? I'm sorry, let me change this. We're about to build out our intranet. Oh, I have a question, sorry. Question here, or I don't think I saw site collection administrator and site information. How can users be added to admin to these sites? That's an excellent question, and one I haven't really thought about. Let me think about that for a minute. So the question is, how do we get site collection administrators over here? If I go to, but I don't know about from the communication site. Oh yeah, here it is. I was about to say, I think the site collection administrators are still there, so you can still do that. You still work with users and groups if you need to. So Eric, you want another email? Oh, this is another email. Yeah, this is the modern site. So you'd have to do it. You can't do it from the SharePoint admin site. I hope that answers the question, but you can't do it from the SharePoint admin site. You can still do it from the site collection itself. And I wish I had a better way to view this. I'm sorry, guys. I am very new to GoToWebinar. But anyway, all right, so you can still do that. All right, so what I want to get on here. So again, we already mentioned this, you can't use some of the traditional web parts on the modern pages. So you can see where they wouldn't really blend in very well, all right? They'd probably have some issues. But let's say we got our intranet here. And let's say we want to build out a fabulous intranet. So now we got our root site and we want to build out our subsites, department sites. If I go to site contents and I go to subsites, or actually I just go to new subsite, guess what's not here? A communication site. Can you believe that? There's no communication site here. So you can't create communication subsites unless you go that whole save as template with PowerShell and change something and save it. But even if you do it, and I've tried it because I was pretty desperate, even if you do it, the new communication site doesn't inherit the navigation from the root. From the parent communication site. That's generally the reason that you want to do it, right? You want the navigation to be the same. That's generally the reason we create subsites. So what does that mean? I think what it means is that that Microsoft is starting to move us to the direction of going more broad with site collections as opposed to going deep with subsites. Now I think that's been a way that we've tried to advise customers to do it for some time, but we just have to do some type of developer trick to get the navigation to be the same. But I think that if you're going to be building out an intranet, in Office 365 now or in SharePoint Online, and even if you're doing it on-prem, I would say, start to think about creating more site collections as opposed to this super deep hierarchy of subsites. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that causes a world of hurt when it comes time to administering those when you only have one site collection. Now, more site collections, I think you have a little bit more control over it, but the question is, how do we group site collections together to say, hey, these are all different site collections, but they all function as one unit, like an intranet, for example. You had a question?
Well, there's still a lot of governance tools missing at the site collection level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for controlling a bunch of them. Yeah, the comment was that there's still a lot of site collection administration tools missing. Excuse me, there's a lot of tools missing and governance implementation tools missing at the site collection level. And yeah, you're right. I think that there's a lot that needs to catch up to this way of thinking. And in fact, one thing that I can tell you now that's in the future is a way to tie these site collections together. So like I said, if you're building out an intranet now, you have to start creating site collections. Well, like what about the navigation, right? I want to have one navigation for all these site collections that would normally require developer intervention. Yeah.
They want to promote this broader horizontal site collection architecture. It's not great.
I would argue against that. Actually, I would. I think that is one thing. So the ability to share things between site collections. No, maybe those two. Maybe.
You're talking about looking up across web parts. You're talking about workflow activities moving across site collections.
Mm-hmm.
All your content management, is all structured by the site collection. You can't do that stuff easily across.
Let's talk about it offline. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about the use case that you're going up against and how site collections may be able to help with that. So let's talk about that a little bit later. But like I was saying, so if you're building out an intranet, now you need to start thinking about creating more site collections than you do subsites. But you're still left with this dilemma of not having a shared navigation. Well, there's a thing that's going to be coming out. It's supposed to be the first half of 2018 called Hub Sites that'll allow you to say, hey, all these sites, although they're different site collections, all these site collections belong to one unit and they can share a navigation element. So you can't see it here, but I encourage you to look it up. But we have this bar here, and I'll just say general, this bar for this site collection. Imagine there being an additional bar above that has a shared navigation across site collections. That's what that would bring.
They're moving the navigation outside of that container.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a recording from the night.
Yeah.
Demonstrates it. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, please. Yeah. So post that in the meetup as well. So yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. I've seen that as well. So there is it the two ladies who were doing it? Or there's okay. Yeah, but anyway, so hub sites not available yet. Hopefully it's going to be coming soon, really soon, but it'll allow you to get over that hump.
On the flip side, though, I also feel that Microsoft is trying to get you to treat SharePoint like any other browser thing and favorite the sites that you want to go to. Basically, just anything that you want, you build your own navigation by following all the sites that you want to use, and then just go back to your tagged sites. So you have that central, which is why anytime you open up a new site, it opens it up in a new window from there. So you can always go back to your central navigation window that has all your tagged sites and just go to the ones that you want to back and forth.
Sure. Yeah, and the comment here for you guys on the GoTo meeting was that Microsoft is starting to, I wouldn't say replace the traditional navigation, but certainly add another element of personalization in that the sites that you follow, the sites that you actually care about, Microsoft doesn't, I mean, nobody can, gone are the days that a SharePoint administrator will say, hey, with this group of people should have these sites, right? Like that's not personalized. That's not individual enough. Like I know the sites that I want to get to. I know the sites that I visit enough, and I should be able to follow those and get to those quickly. Is pretty much what you're going for. And I think that's a value add. All right. Oh yeah. So the last thing I wanted to point out is that you saw when I created a slick page that I didn't get the ability to manage metadata or any type of metadata about the page. I didn't get to tag it. I didn't get to categorize it. I didn't get to do anything. If I were to create 100 different pages here, let me create a new page. Oh, look at that. I got some, I'll say multiple columns. So I'm just going to save a page here, save it. I didn't have the ability to do anything with this page in terms of creating a true taxonomy. Let's say, for example, I want to group all of my pages together. How do I do that? Right now, there's no real easy way for you to do that. You have to go into site settings or to site contents and go to your site pages library here and say, oh yeah, well here are all the pages that were created. Let me somehow try to group these together. And I'm not sure what happens actually. You can't put in a folder. So you got this. What you're going to end up with if you have been dealing with a site for some time. And I was working on an internet project where we had a handful of news articles and some site pages. How do you know what's what? They're just all listed out in a list. It's really flat. There's not really a way for you to categorize them. If you wanted to put in something like folders, which I know is, you can get your hand slapped for saying folder nowadays, but by applying the metadata to it, I have to go into each individual page after I've created it and change the metadata. Then I can use grouping or whatnot. I can even change the content type if I need to, but it doesn't allow me to do that as I'm editing the page. So that's just another quirky thing. But anyway, that's all the course that I can think of that I've kind of run across. But all in all, I think that I'm pretty pleased with it. I'm happy the way that things are going. I'll be a lot happier when they create more web parts and give people more functionality to play with in there. But all in all, I like the way the direction is going. So that's all I got. Any questions? Sure. What's the question? Yes. Yes. Correct. Yeah. So the question here was that, can you still leverage your Active Directory groups in your infrastructure to control the permissions? And the answer is absolutely yes. Got a question on the phone, on the call. It looks like the contextual ribbon has evolved quite differently in modern experience. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on it, but I do have some thoughts on it. I'll tell you how I really feel, since I'm not going to be the president anymore. I always thought the ribbon was kind of silly, to take something that was built for a desktop application and try to get it into a browser experience and try to get this experience where everything looks the same and feels the same when they're actually completely different and use cases are different. Like I'm not going to open up Microsoft Word and try to edit a document on my phone, but I may want to edit a page on my phone, or I may want to look at a page on my phone. And I always thought that the ribbon was silly, and I'm pretty happy to see it go away. If I'm being quite honest. Question, Manita? Yeah. Oh yeah. So one thing I didn't demonstrate is that custom what workflows. That's define custom. Do you mean like create your own workflows with SharePoint Designer? I'm pretty sure that capability still exists. Now, one thing I didn't cover tonight, and I apologize, is that you still have the ability to create lists. You have the ability to work with stuff just like SharePoint, normally has. So those things still exist. They didn't go anywhere. Oh yeah, absolutely. Document library interface looks different. It looks like this. It has the modern experience as well. It looks different, but the functionality is still there. The functionality is still there. Another question here. Question that's a bit off topic. Can you guys see that? Okay. OneDrive for Business will sync into hard drive. Takes a lot of local storage. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with OneDrive and the syncing capabilities, to be honest. I'm not sure I'm equipped to answer that question. I'm sorry, Naveen. Questioner. Mhm. Sure. One of the comments here, with regards to your question, and sorry, I'll repeat it, is that was it InfoLogix? FS Logics. Apparently, maybe somebody that can help you with that question. He said that with virtualization, it looks like the OneDrive clients starting to take up more storage than they actually are saying that they're taking up. But FS Logics can help you or has a tool to help with that. Yes, sir. Yeah. All right, so let's look at some PowerShell. Am I AZ SharePoint Pros? Yeah, so I was about to say, I don't know. All right. I haven't deleted an email in there since 2018. You sure you sent it there? Yeah. Clutter. Maybe you're in clutter. He wasn't sending anything. Junk email, maybe? No, I don't have anything. But you send it to my Google mail. Say it again. That's on all. I don't have anything in there. Oh, you know what happens? Actually, my email gets ripped out of there and it goes to my Gmail. Sorry. I bet it's in here. Yeah, here we go. All right. Oh. Oh. What is this script that you blessed us with? Yeah, absolutely. This is your user group now. Mhm.
Just so the folks online can hear me.
Yep, sure.
And you guys, of course. All right, so let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. All right, so related to modern sites, Lester showed the different types of modern sites you can create. There's a team site, there are communication sites. The communication sites have 3 different templates: blank, topic, and showcase. You can create these with PowerShell as well. If you're automating the processes that you're going through and you're moving fully modern and you want to script things out and automate the provisioning of these site collections, you can do so with PowerShell. You'll notice on line 10 here, that's not touchscreen. I'm so used to that at this point. But on line 10, we've got the connect P&P online. So P&P, patterns and practices. One of the things I'll probably do in a future session, and we can vote on this and just determine when we do it and so on. The patterns and practices group is like an open source repository of code for SharePoint on-prem and online, supported by Microsoft. There are people who do this full time, day in and day out. I've made a couple contributions to the repository, but you'll see a lot of PowerShell commandlets that say connect SPO or SP online. Everything with P&P starts with P&P on the verb, or sorry, on the noun. So connect P&P online instead of SP online. The Microsoft stuff is all SP or SPO. The P&P stuff is always P&P. And I can go into more detail on that later. But what I wanted to show is I've got some variables, and I apologize for the formatting. This is a result of emailing stuff from another formatted document. We set some variables: modern site URL 1, 2, 3, classic site URL 1.
Oh, nice.
And so this section of code that I've highlighted 39 through 47 says I'm going to create a new P&P site. So we're using the P&P PowerShell, which is a layer on top of Microsoft stuff. I think of it as better, more robust, more capabilities, and thousands of people worldwide would agree. And in this case, I'm going to create a communication site. I'm going to give it that URL I stored in a variable earlier. The title is that string you see. The description is that string you see. And then the site design, which is a parameter, says blank. So this is like me going to SharePoint Home, saying I want a new site collection, communications, blank template, go. I can do this with PowerShell. And this is parameterized script. So if I had a CSV file or an XML file with hundreds or thousands potentially of rows of data, I can cycle through those with PowerShell very easily and provision hundreds or thousands or too many sites all at once. So scrolling down, same format, new P&P site, communication site using that showcase site design. The next section right there, new communication site, topic site design. And then we have creating a modern team site. which is a little bit different and a little bit, this one threw me off at first, because if you look at these guys, communication sites, you specify the URL that you want, which you would expect when you create a site, right? It's what we've done for years. With a team site, there is no URL parameter. And this reinforces the common, the idea that Microsoft is combining teams and groups.
And Microsoft Teams.
And that's what I mean. Microsoft Teams and Office 365 groups in conjunction with SharePoint team sites. Those three things are all kind of one thing now. So what this PowerShell I have highlighted is doing is it's going to create a new, quote, team site that's tied to an Office 365 group that will also have a Microsoft team associated with it. So where's the group specification? The group specification is on lines 83 and 84, the alias. The alias must be unique. So I created this as MTS04 because in my developer brain I was like, modern team site 04. I don't know what this is going to do before I run it, so let's just call it something generic. But really what you would call this is, you know, human resources or IT or whatever you want the Office 365 group to be labeled as is what you would put in as your alias. And Microsoft is commoditizing SharePoint, right? We're going to be doing less customization of SharePoint as time goes on. We're just going to use SharePoint for what SharePoint's good for. Collaboration, document storage, so on and so forth, right? So they don't even let us decide what our SharePoint site URL is going to be. It's based on that alias. It's based on whatever provisioning happens behind the scenes. Last thing, a little bit more PowerShell. And again, this is the PnP approach. I don't know offhand if there are Microsoft PowerShell approaches for this. I would stick with PnP. It's updated more frequently, has much more support, community involvement. We're creating a new PnP tenant site, and this is a classic team site in SharePoint. Why didn't they call it classic site or whatever? I don't know. There's some underlying terminology in the dev side, I'm sure, where this is referenced as a tenant site, so they said, let's call this commandlet the tenant site. But this is creating a classic site. So you get to choose the title, description, the URL, who's the owner. The template is STS#0, which is your team site template. Then the locale ID along with the time zone. So those are all, there are other parameters I think you can specify as well. But
Can you create a communication site using the new PnP tenant site?
so can you create a communication site using the new PnP tenant site? I believe you cannot. Because there is no site design command parameter on the new PnP tenant site commandlet. So one thing that's interesting, if you create a modern site and apply a classic theme to it, you will kind of see that applied, but not really. Because all the modern stuff, when we say a modern site, it's kind of different because in the world of modern SharePoint, there are modern experiences. Okay, a site is a site is a site. But the modern experiences are the modern page experience and the modern list experience. Sites are still underneath the same, but the way pages behave is different, the way lists behave is different. And as time goes on, we may have other modern experiences added to those two, but those are really the two that we have right now. So anyway, I just wanted to show this, that if you're looking at automating some of this stuff, there's some PowerShell out there to help do that.
All right, any other questions?
Thanks, Lester.
All right, well, thank you guys very much for being here today. I hope you learned something, and yeah, that's it. See you guys later on the interwebs.
Put my contact info
Where?
online, just on the screen so they can see it.
Sure.
In case anyone else has questions.
Sure. Tell me. How do you want me to share this? These guys?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, say that again.
Do you have a document library example which is newer?
I can create one real quick. Yeah, absolutely. So now we're just kind of going off road. You guys are free to leave. But yeah, so here's a showcase site. Here's a document library. Oh, sorry. Here's a document library. This is what it looks like. So if I want to upload a whole bunch of files, so you can see what that behavior is like.
Basic modern experience.
Well, there's a couple things about this experience that are pretty neat too. So let me show you. So the ribbon is gone, but one thing that's nice. Look at this though. If I select this guy and click this eye icon, I get a preview of the image and I can edit the properties right here. Click save, and it just did it. Yeah, so I didn't go to the edit form. Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty nice, I think. I mean, and you have capabilities here. I mean, this is the equivalent. Yeah. This is your what we used to call, excuse me, the ECB menu, and it's still there. And this is where your ribbon content would have been. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Now, one thing that I found a little bit interesting with this, so these items are contextual to what you have selected. So yeah, like you said, like they'll change depending on how many things you have selected. One thing yeah. Well, no, I think the move command has been there. But there's a copy to that's pretty nice.
The other thing you have to remember is that now under the gear is where you'll find your library settings.
I was just about to say that has always been tripping me out.
Yeah.
Like, where's the library settings?
Yeah,
Well, it's tucked under the gear here. So
and the other thing that bothers me about this, go back to the gear for a second.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll notice, you don't have your site settings here. You have to go back to the top of the site to be able to get to your site settings.
No, you click site information and view all site settings.
Okay.
So that's the way to do it too. Yeah. So exactly, it's like, holy crap, where's the site settings now?
I've always been going back to the freaking root.
I can change my image.
Okay.
That's a good question. Let's find out together because I don't know. So export.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know if that capability is there or not.
Well, that's typically the scope of the export. So if you go to a particular view, use that view.
No, because there's no.
No, she's
there's
talking
no
about.
export.
Here, let me see if it's.
There's no link to.
Let me add a different list. Let me add a custom list to see if that does it.
Like in a document, you used to like link a document library to Outlook. Those links are not there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and the other thing that has me particularly
Here you go.
about
It's
this.
not on the document library, but it is on the list. No, I think it's just on any list. It's just not on. I'm not sure if I have any other lists here, but maybe events.
Document libraries can't export to Excel.
Oh, look, the ribbon just showed up. Oh, that's right. Calendars don't have
Calendars
that.
calendars are classic.
This is crazy. Yeah, calendars are still classic. All right.
In the modern experience, there's no send to.
No send
You can't configure the send to.
to like a record set or something.
Or to any other.
Really?
Yeah, you can't configure a custom send to, which has me that just messes up.
I thought I saw that.
Move is not the same thing as send to.
No, I know. Ah, well.
You find it. You find
Yeah,
it,
I'll try to find it. I'll try to find it. Maybe.
You go right ahead.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry. I'm stopping recording now.